Well, welcome back to another episode of Revolutionaries, the EmpoweRx podcast. I am MK Bryan, the founder and CEO of EmpoweRx. And today I have a very special guest, Nathan Koch of Koch Imaging Solutions, LLC, one of our ICOSAs in our community. Very excited to have him with us and to share his journey. So, Nathan, how are you today? And tell us a little bit about what makes you a revolutionary.
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to share what you've helped me with this journey. It's been ups and downs and all sorts of things. So I'm very excited to share and help other folks out too, as you've helped me out. So I'm an MRI tech, and I was doing, work as a staff tech for, I don't know, 5-7 years, something like that. And then, went into the traveling MRI tech through staffing agencies, and wasn't real happy with the amount of pay that they were taking when I felt like I was the boots on the ground sort of guy. And then also felt I wasn't necessarily treated fairly all the time with that. So was able to learn about EmpoweRx and did some research on it, and super excited. And with your help, opened up an LLC and became an I.C.O.S.A. And just been a crazy journey, and ended up being very good. So I'm very happy I did it, and excited, and ready to share it with other people, and hopefully they will do it too.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. I
You
think
bet.
one of the things that's really obviously I've had the honor to get to know you, over the past, I don't know, probably 6 months or more at this point. Um, and work with you kind of, a little more one-on-one, which again has been a real honor and exciting to be part of your journey.
Thank you.
I'd love to just kind of take a little bit of a step back, because I think one of the things that makes your story so interesting and what makes you such a revolutionary is that you really have a very diverse professional background. You haven't been an MRI tech forever, right? It's kind of another evolution in your professional journey. So if you would be so kind and wouldn't mind maybe sharing a little bit about your background prior to becoming an MRI technologist or tech. Would that be something that you'd be willing to share with the audience?
Sure. I was fairly unfocused coming out of high school, so tried a bunch of different things. Tried college at that point, and it didn't really resonate with me. Um,
Mhm.
did some traveling, ended up in construction for quite a while. I had owned some businesses back before I got into X-ray and then MRI. So I had a little bit of background in uh, owning some businesses, owned some tanning salons and a roofing company and different periods in there. And then,
Cool.
got a little older and a little more focused, and decided to go back to school. I think I went back to school for X-ray when I was 38. So, and I'm 52 now. So, I'd done a lot of different things before the X-ray. When I was quite a bit younger, I was in hospitality, which I think had lent itself to a little bit of patient care, just to be, kind of very polite to people, and coming from the hospitality industry, I think lent itself very well to dealing with patients and meeting their needs. But then when I got into X-ray, I didn't necessarily like X-ray that much, so I did that I think for around a year or something like that, and then decided to go back to school for MRI. And I think that all the stuff I'd done before that kind of helped prop up the my skill set for
Mhm.
MRI and patient care, and either working in clinics or hospitals. So for the first about 5 years, excuse me, of my MRI career, I had worked in independent imaging facilities and not hospitals. And then the kind of second half of this journey, I had worked more in hospital setting, and that's where I was exposed to travelers and
Mhm.
understanding what that was about. I'd heard about it, but I didn't really know anything about that, and then it kind of went from there into traveling MRI tech.
Mhm. Awesome. Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
I think
sure.
it's so cool. Just kind of where you come from and all the things you've done, and how all those things that in our past, all those steps we've taken kind of, get us to where we are. So it's always so neat to
Yeah.
hear a little bit about that. I love that about your story. Um,
Thanks.
yeah, so getting into, the travel pieces, one of the things we love to learn about folks is, what was the catalyst for that? I mean, there's obviously a lot of different reasons that people get into doing travel work, but if you could just share a couple of the key reasons that you stepped into that realm of healthcare staffing, what was the catalyst?
Sure. Well, I think maybe my background lent itself to that too, that I get pretty bored easily. And I don't necessarily like uh, working for giant corporations or entities.
Hmm.
Kind of being, a little bit lighter on my feet in the first part of my career um, made me not want to just be another person in a giant machine. So I get frustrated with situations like that. I feel like I'm just a cog in the machine,
Hmm.
and you don't have as much freedom. And then also, you from a financial perspective, I don't feel like you make as much as you could. And I've kind of grown up with the adage that unless you're working for yourself, you're making somebody else money. And I was kind of getting frustrated with just the grind. And if a raise were to come up and they're talking about, a 3% raise or even less than that, that doesn't impress me that much. And with today's tumultuous times, it's not keeping up with inflation even. Um,
Right.
so I was fairly unhappy in the situation, but then some travelers came through there, and then talking to them about their amount of income and what they were saying, um, regarding the amount of freedom and stuff like that. I really took it to heart and then started looking into it from there. And
Hmm.
and then I did it, and I was working with just a standard travel staffing agency, and I was pretty surprised to find out when my first assignment that I was making about 40% less than the other travelers were making. And that was just due to the fact that the travel company itself, I don't think, was very fair. They kind of saw me coming, if you want to look
Yeah,
at
like
it
a
that
new
way.
traveler kind of
Yeah,
thing.
new
Hmm.
traveler, and they just took advantage of me, I feel, and what I think should have been my monetary compensation, they took it. So then I had to kind of argue with them, and I stayed at the same place and with the same company, and renegotiated my contract after the 3 months, which is generally, I find, your standard time length that you sign these agreements for.
Hmm.
Um, and so I kind of had to fight with them, and then they ended up increasing my pay rate to, I think, a little bit closer to fair, and then I ended up staying with them again for another contract, and renegotiated again, and they came up again. And that shows you just how much room they
Hmm.
have there and how much they take advantage of people that don't understand what's going on. So that really soured me to these staffing agencies and how much they take, and how you're just just a tool. And again, you're a cog in their machine. You may have a little bit more freedom and you may be making a little more money, but the situation is the same, that you're just kind of a tool for them, their income. And they're
Right.
in the company that I was dealing with, my best interest wasn't their bottom line. Their bottom line was their bottom line. So
Yeah.
um, that I was just super happy to kind of stumble across EmpoweRx on the internet, and did a lot of research on you folks there, and was just amazed and surprised. And boy, it was just down my alley of being in more control over my life and my career. And it ended up just being fantastic. So it all worked
Awesome.
out very well.
Yeah.
So I'm
Wonderful.
just super happy about the whole outcome.
Wonderful. And as I'm listening to you share your story, it reminds me, and maybe some folks who are newer to the audience, I started Empower RX after going back to school for nursing and starting as a travel nurse recruiter. And much like your discovery, on the other side of it, I couldn't believe how the healthcare providers were not the ones that were being protected and valued. It was like this commodity that they could get rid of and get a new one really, really fast. And it was really about their profit margins and the relationships with the vendors, which of course those relationships are important. I get that. But it was pretty shocking to me. And so when I hear your story, it just resonates with what I saw on the other side of it, and was like, this should really change. And obviously here we are today working towards that goal. So that's wonderful to hear, and I appreciate you sharing it. Wonderful that obviously you could turn things around with autonomy and finding Empower RX. So let's talk a little bit about that. So you found us online, which is so cool. Did some research about us, and then obviously, I'm connected for an intake call. I'm sure discovery call. But tell me a little bit about kind of what made you decide to invest in the clinician entrepreneurship program, and kind of what that journey was like as far as getting started with it. What were the challenges, and what was the support like? Kind of just share a little bit about your experience with the program and with us.
Sure. I find it very exciting in today's day and age that there's a lot of tools that a person can use to do anything.
Mm.
I remember when I was younger, I had bought a car and I was trying to fix it, and the internet wasn't around. So I bought a manual on the car and was
Mhm.
trying to read out of a book of how to fix this car. And today I just jump on YouTube, and there's 50 videos on what I'm doing. And I
Right.
think it's a very powerful tool that we have today, that there's so many avenues to get instruction from.
Mhm.
And I think that sometimes myself, being so frugal, have spent a dollar trying to save a dime, and also wasted a lot of time in trying to
Mhm.
save some money and figure something out when it was there. And if you do a little bit of research and find an avenue to get training, I think it's very, and you like it and it's legit, I think it behooves you to go ahead and spend a little bit of money on it, because you're going to save so much time, which
Right.
then will you'll be able to make so much more money with the time you saved. So
Mhm.
I didn't, as I said, I did my research on EmpoweRx. I thought it was a fantastic learning opportunity. So glad I did it. And then through doing it, instead of reinventing the wheel or doing a bunch of research for a couple months and trying to figure out this whole scenario, it was just laid
Mhm.
out. And then you were so kind to help me, and your organization, to teach me everything. And the group calls were fantastic. And I was gleaning so much information from that. It's just fantastic, a fantastic opportunity and tool and resource. And it really, really helped make the process so much more expedient.
Hmm.
And I'm just so happy I did it because I've made so much more money than the tiny investment that I did in the beginning,
Right.
financially, and just saved so much time. But
Hmm.
yeah, and so it's laid out so well in with action items through the videos and stuff like that, that you watch a video, you know about it, and you become educated on it, and then you go do it. It's just laid out step by step, and that's just super valuable tool. And you're using the resources of professionals to help you through your journey. Just great.
Awesome. That's so wonderful to hear. And that's really what the goal of the program is. And when I started researching to build the program, um, it was one of the things I noticed is that there's a lot of misinformation and specifically gearing travelers to just working for an agency. It's almost like kind of like, we can't do this, you can only do this. It was like this weird way that like information was funneling people to this decision, and I thought, well, that's just not accurate. And so it's really encouraging to hear that the mission of the program was you actually got the value that the mission is set out to provide, which is saving time, providing those resources so that you can feel confident and you can save on missteps, right? Because
Yes,
missteps cost extra time and oftentimes extra money.
absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons, we've got our professional partnerships and all the different things that we've done and iteratively grown this over the years just to ensure that everybody is really safe and confident in how they move forward with these things, because some of it can be a little complicated. So we
Yeah,
wanted to try to make it simple, and I think that
yeah.
that's encouraging to hear, and I'm so glad that the program had that value for you.
I
So
I think
mhm,
you did make it very simple, and also I do want to say this too. It helped me very much get to my goal of being an ICOSA, and not utilizing a staffing agency, but it went much deeper than that. It was the mechanism. It helped me and was the mechanism to get further knowledge in, LLC, different types of tax selections. I myself am an S corp tax selection. I knew a little bit about that before, but going through this process, you really get a deeper understanding of the fundamentals of the whole process: invoicing, business bank account, uh, paying yourself,
yeah, it's a big
the
one.
tax situation, and CPAs and stuff like that, which that information is very important for an individual or family or whatever through the rest of their lives, to
Right.
deal with the monetary system and to come out of, say, high school with no clue about money, savings, and how all that stuff works is not a very good way to succeed in that arena through the rest of your life. So that information will help you in, your financial life forever. And really, if somebody doesn't know about that, they're leaving money on the table still, because they're probably not making the best decisions. So that was a deeper level that kind of came about through this, not just the job and the initial income, but an entire understanding of the monetary, system, and what I can do to further my position for the rest of my life. So that ended up being very powerful. And I didn't expect that. So I was
Wow.
very happily surprised about that.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that. That's really
Yeah. You,
exciting.
oh yeah,
That's
you bet.
super encouraging to me as well.
Yeah.
Um, So, so okay, so you've got the program, you've got the resources, and then from there, obviously, as you've mentioned, you've been able to be successful with, obtaining a direct contract. And so obviously, the audience, super valuable information because I think, through my experience as kind of obviously spearheading all of this with starting the company and walking through this journey with many folks over the years and our own initiatives to be able to offer this in a more scalable way to the healthcare ecosystem as a whole. Um, wading through the layers of, gatekeepers, decision makers, and all of the different players within the healthcare ecosystem. It's challenging. I always say it's the most challenging part of the whole equation. And it really
Yes.
does take a lot of persistence, professionalism, a lot of things that we really do try to drive home to folks. So tell us a little bit about what that looked like for you. What were, some of the challenges along the way, and what do you think ultimately was able to get you across the finish line?
Well, what I think it looked like for me was the facility that I was at had a huge need for MRI techs. They were severely understaffed. They had all travelers,
Mm.
which is not necessarily where a business wants to be,
Right.
because we cost a lot more than, say, a staff tech, but they couldn't get anybody. So there was this big need. I went in there and uh, it was a nice place to work. Very excited about working there. Very excited about being a traveling tech. So I gave it 110%. And if you perform as an employee, or a traveler,
Hmm.
and are professional, as you said, and you're just a hard worker, and you go in there and just do a fantastic job for them, and there's a huge need, they really like you, and want you on their side, and that is what happened.
Hmm.
Um, my manager and also the director of the diagnostic imaging department really became my advocates, and so I approached them with this situation and hiring me as an ICOSA opposed to a traveler. And there are quite a few quite a few benefits for a company to do that if
Hmm.
the ICOSA can come in less than the rate at which they pay a staffing company. Immediately the uh, hospital or clinic or entity will save money, and if you charge your rate that's a little higher than what you were making as a staffing employee and eliminating that middleman, the facility can pay less and you can make more. It's just a win-win. And there's also a better level of communication because there's
Right.
not a middleman in there. But there's a multitude of benefits, but the challenge here was to educate, because it's a new business model and not a lot of people are familiar with it. A lot of companies are familiar with it. And your job really, after you do a fantastic job and you want them to keep you there,
Hmm.
is to educate them on how this whole system works, how you're going, what the benefits are for them, what you're going to do for them, and then figuring out the hierarchy of the gatekeepers, as you said. And
Right.
in my particular position, I had the management and the director really on my side. However, being a new business model, the HR department has no idea the benefits that you can bring to the table. And so it was a big and MK, you very much helped me with it as well. But it was a big, basically, you're teaching the
Hmm.
HR department and the facility of how this whole system works and how you can save them a ton of money and how you can be a better employee for them, because
Hmm.
they were gonna, because in my situation, I had to kind of move on for a while because the IRS was going to start looking at me as a resident, and I wasn't going to get my tax-free stipends, which are a big benefit as a traveler. and that was going to go away. So if I worked there as an I.C.O.S.A, then I wasn't making my money through tax-free stipends. So it was a great benefit to me, but it's also a benefit to them, because at that point they had spent a lot of money in getting me up to speed in their facility and learning their
Mhm.
systems. And at that point, I was fantastic. So I had a lot of utility to them if they were
Right.
to keep me, but they couldn't keep me. And they were going to hire a fresh traveling tech for more than I would have come in as an I.C.O.S.A. And that traveling tech hadn't been there for, a long length of time. And they were
Mhm.
going to have to train them again. And they, you're not as efficient in the beginning because you don't know the systems and
Sure.
and
Mhm.
and where the rooms are and all that stuff. So it just made so much sense. But they were super resistant because they didn't understand the benefits. So it's this big, long process of breaking down the barriers of
Mhm.
them even entertaining the idea of new information and giving
Mhm.
it its merit, then providing it. So it was quite a quite an experience in teaching the
Mhm.
facility what the benefits were and why they needed to do this. And eventually after a long period of time and different levels of management being brought in to massage HR and other levels of administration in there to force them to save money. It
Mhm.
was it was very, very interesting, but in the end, it all worked out. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you hit on some really key points that I just want to recap for the audience. So, number one, first and foremost, do a good job and don't be a drama queen or king. Like, I can say through all of my experience in HR and management, which is quite extensive, over 30 years of working with people, um, in the last 8 of them in this particular vertical from an HR management perspective, I'd say that's the biggest killer, is that if you're gonna create drama and all these types of things, it's really not what a traveler is designed to do. They can get enough of that with their full-time employees, but you really need to come in and be this quiet, amazing worker that just does what needs to get done, pitches in where you need to pitch in. And honestly, if that's not kind of the core of who you are as a professional, it's probably not the best role for you to take as a traveler. And I know that might sound really bold and maybe upset some people, but it's really quite true. I think that you really have to have a certain personality to be what I call a true traveler, which, Nathan, you exemplify that, right? You come in, you do a good job, you learn the systems, and you're a team player that the management's just like, Nathan's got it. And I know because I spoke to the management there about you. So I know that that's absolutely true, right? So I think that's first and foremost. Professionalism is so key to this being successful for anybody, no matter what type of healthcare professional you are. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And I think the education piece is also really key. And some of the things that you mentioned that I think oftentimes kind of get lost in the shuffle is when you're educating these folks about this new, way of looking at the entire healthcare staffing ecosystem when it comes to contingent staffing, is that there's these little tiny rules that everyone's bound to once you put yourself into this W-2 agency box. And that key one is the duration of time you can stay somewhere. And this continuously comes up in my conversations with people for the exact reason that you mentioned, which is so key, is that you're already trained. You already know the systems, the hospital, the EMR, the rooms, and the staff. I think that's really important too. You already have a relationship with them. That cost is, I'm going to guess without for a full-time employee, it's well over $30,000 onboarding, right? So think about that for a traveler and investing, even if it's $15,000, which I'm sure it's more, that's a lot of money. And so when you can educate and drive home those key pieces that really they're not thinking about, right? Because their goal is to make sure they have an MRI tech or a nurse or whatever it is. So, um, So I think that you did an excellent job of explaining that, but you also did an excellent job of living it. And then the final piece that I think was so impressive, and I think another thing that kind of gets lost in this process is persistence. And I think we would say positive persistence or something as we were, going through it. And because that's really what it comes down to is, this professional positive persistence to get to the goal because it benefits everybody. But at the same time, you don't want to be, obnoxious, right? You need to balance
Right.
that professionalism. And so I think you did
Yeah.
such an incredible job of
Oh,
managing all of
thank
those
you.
things. And
Thanks.
what I think often happens and what I've seen is the persistence part. People just say, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. And I'm just going to move on, which of course is an option. Um, and as you alluded to, the situation, that with getting your first direct contract as an ICOSA, which is an independent clinician owned staffing agency for anybody in the audience. That's a term that we use within the EmpoweRx ecosystem. But essentially that journey was, of course, not this straight, it was this rocky road, of course, because anything new, right, is going to be that way. And you actually had to leave the facility for a brief moment. And then what I think was so impressive is you kept in touch and you didn't just let it go. And I think that was part of the major reason that you had success with that. What do you think about that piece of it?
Definitely. Stay in touch, keep it professional, on a professional level, good friends with them. And I do want to see how the facility's doing. And they're curious about my journey too, because everybody was kind of surprised at this whole ICOSA situation and excited about it and thought it was
Hmm.
real neat. So everybody's real interested in the situation. And so I'm always going to keep the doors open. You never want to, close a door on an opportunity. And I did keep them apprised of what was going on when I left, and stayed in touch. And you definitely have to do that. Networking is such a powerful tool. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And I totally agree. And your computer froze for a minute there when you had started. So um Nathan was just talking about how staying in touch, he had to leave the facility for a minute. And then key thing is he stayed in touch with all the folks and then ended up being able to come back and land a pretty extensive as far as duration direct contract. So it was quite successful as he mentioned. So just to kind of recap there, because technology
Yes.
is it's what it
Yeah.
is.
You never want to close the doors. Keep it
Hmm.
professional, but keep in contact.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things again that kind of gets lost in the shuffle with, all the things that we're trying to, put forward in the clinician entrepreneurship program is one of the key things is that, what you want to do is build a relationship so that when, let's say the new full-time people that they hire for the imaging department, when they're going to take vacation or if, God forbid they get hurt or something, the first person that they think of is Nathan and Coke Imaging Solutions. That's really the goal. And if you keep in touch with folks and keep that relationship going, that's obviously one of the benefits of that. So I think that's wonderful and such a great point to bring up that I really want the audience to think about, how are you maintaining your relationships? So even if you approached, a manager and had a conversation and maybe it didn't go exactly where you wanted it to go, just think about it. That's another conversation to have later. That's a person to keep in touch with for maybe in the future down the road.
That's right. And you cannot always predict um, their needs in the future.
Right.
They may tell you and have a certain need one day, and then 3 months later, their needs have completely changed, and they may be open to something that they weren't before, or their mindsets may have changed. They may have come across something on television or the internet or whatever that
Mhm.
has opened their mind, or they educated themselves in the interim. So if you can always, as you said, kind of be on the tip of their mind, that if they need something, they can call you. And I had some business cards printed up, and there's a business card in everybody's hand that's involved in this situation, so that later on down the road, they may run across it, and the situation may have changed, and my situation may have changed too.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm gonna want to leave after the contract, and 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 then maybe in a year or two I'll want to come back, and then if they have an opening, maybe I can do it again. So you never really know what the future may hold. So you always got to keep your network alive and your doors open, and just keep it professional, because you don't know what the heck may happen in the future, and they get you back. And
Yeah.
the more options you have, the more opportunity you can create for yourself.
Yeah, wonderful. I love that you did business cards. I know, as part of the clinician entrepreneurship program, some of the things that I advocate for is if you're going to invest any money, invest in a nice logo. And, if that's, if you're going to put money somewhere, a nice logo is the where to put that money, and business cards, and then build out your LinkedIn, professional page. Do not invest in a website. Everybody wants a website, and I'll tell you right now, it's not going to be a good ROI, because it's something that you have to maintain, that has absolutely no way to get traffic to it. So I love that you did business cards, because it's simple and it's effective, way more effective than having a website. So I love that. That's fantastic. So looking at what's ahead, so what's next for you and your business? Kind of what are you, I know you're, working right now and it's going really well. But, kind of looking ahead, right, as a business owner, one of the things that we should be doing is kind of looking to the future, right? Because you never know what's going to happen. So have you thought about kind of what's in the future for you, or what your next steps is, or some of your planning that you're thinking of as you continue to grow your business?
Absolutely. So, to kind of circle back just a little bit, I did have to leave this situation due to the IRS soon going to classify me as a resident and
Hmm.
pull the tax-free stipend. So, I'll just run through this real quick. What had happened is I um, went to a different city with my travel company that I'd been working with, and a very open and friendly hospital situation to become a ICOSA, or I'm sorry, a staffing employee there through a
Hmm.
staffing agency. But there were some conflicts with my previous um, employment as a staff company, that I could not work at this facility as a traveling tech for 1 year. And I didn't know that existed, but I then had found that a lot of places do that,
Hmm.
um, because they didn't want people jumping ship and coming back as a traveler and charging them more. But anyway, I
Right.
ended up paying for an apartment up there, and I couldn't get out of it. And after working at this new facility for 1 day, management from a whole different state came down and said, "Hey, this guy can't work there as a traveler. Hire him
Mm.
as a staff tech." And they were trying to hire me as a staff tech, but the money just wasn't there. So to make a long story short, I ended up having a vacant apartment in that city for 3 months, which was the duration of the contract that I was
Right.
chopped out of. And the hospital, of course, wouldn't help me and recoup those costs and expenses. And then the staffing agency wouldn't help me either. And there were both contracts involved covering me, but long story short, they didn't. So I decided to get an RV. So have an RV, and I'm going to travel around different parts of the country in the RV for a few different reasons. You don't sign contracts at these RV parks. They're a lot less expensive than apartment rent. I'm
Mhm.
much lighter on my feet. I'm in a very beautiful location right now, and
Mhm.
I am going to continue my ICOSA journey, create more opportunity for myself, and travel around to different cities for the foreseeable future and just play it by ear.
Awesome. And one of the
Yeah.
things that I love this, I love the story. I love that you've got your RV. It's so wonderful. I'm so happy for you. And it's been so wonderful being part of Nathan's journey, part of your journey. It's always an honor to walk with people, and walk alongside of you and be, vent together, right? And this has
Yeah.
been quite an exciting journey. We've had lots of really cool meetings as a result of it. And one of the unique things that we did, and this is really about the partnership, and this is what we are about, is about community. We're about partnership because truly at the heart of what we do, we can't do it if we're not doing it together. If we want to bring this to a larger audience, if we want to be scalable and we want the marketplace to be prolific so that all the ICOSAs have opportunities, we have to work together. And that's always been a core, value of what we do. And so when we get the opportunity to do that with, someone like yourself, Nathan, it's such a great experience for us to learn together, to build relationships together. And then one of the things that I just want to share briefly about that we got to do with you is we got to kind of be creative. And we said, hey, why don't we help you with invoicing and showcase that if they can embrace this, ICOSA EmpoweRx marketplace concept and save all this money, look at some of the efficiency that we can provide as a partner. And I know through my conversations with the accounting department and the imaging director, they thought it was incredible, right? And they allowed us to partner with you to do that. And I think it'll be beneficial for you for reporting and different things like that as well. And we don't have to get into the weeds of that because the point of it is that if we can partner and be creative, it starts to open more and more doors, which I think is, again, for the future setup of, they're going to think about, what other options are out there. And the other piece of this journey that's really interesting that I did want the audience to hear about is that, Nathan was able to get a direct contract. We were able to implement providing invoicing services with him, and they have an MSP. So they have one of the largest MSPs that operate in the United States as their managed service provider. And all of this was done with them in place. So when you hear people say, oh, we have an MSP, we can't do it, it's not true. And we've been saying that for years because every contract that we've ever had with the marketplace, they of course have one in place. And so it's definitely something that comes back to that education. And I wanted to make sure to kind of hone in on some of those partnership pieces and kind of where we can all go if we work together, which I think was another really exciting part of this experience.
Yeah, it was really interesting to learn about that. And I did want to take this opportunity to thank you so much because I definitely couldn't have done it without you. There were so many creative steps here that I didn't really know what to do. So you walking me through and holding my hand at some times was super helpful. So that kind of reiterates again, um, to utilize a company like yours for education and help, opposed to trying to navigate situations like this on your own.
Mhm.
So thank you so much for everything you've done. I don't think I could have done it without you. So
Well,
it was absolutely the correct decision, and the invoicing is fantastic also. So
awesome.
helpful. So yeah. So
Wonderful. Well, we are absolutely honored to be part of your journey. I know Connor and I love working with you, and we're really excited about the future and working together in more and more capacities. So, and I really appreciate you taking time today to chat with us and tell your story. I think it's such an encouragement and just so wonderful to share, all of your successes and challenges along the way and just kind of the real life of what's going on within the EmpoweRx community and this whole I.C.O.S.A journey. So thanks so much, Nathan. Really
my
appreciate
pleasure.
you. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks.